I hired a genealogist. They found 3 siblings never mentioned. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. 3 months and $2,400 later, Margaret Chen had finally delivered what she promised, a complete family tree going back 4 generations. I'd hired the genealogist on a whim after Dad's funeral in February, thinking maybe I'd find some distant cousins or interesting ancestors to help fill the gaping hole his death had left behind. I never expected to find out I wasn't actually an only child. My hands shook as I stared at the neatly typed report. There they were, listed in black and white: Rebecca Martinez, 31. James Whitmore, 28. Catherine Whitmore, 25. All sharing one critical detail with me: our father, Robert Whitmore. The same Robert Whitmore who told me we couldn't afford to send me to State University. Who said dental work was cosmetic when I begged to fix my crooked teeth. Who made me work double shifts at the grocery store to buy my own car while apologizing that his fixed income couldn't help. Margaret had been thorough. Bank records going back 15 years showed monthly transfers of $3,000 to Rebecca, $2,800 to James, and $2,500 to Catherine. College tuition payments to Northwestern, Duke, and Stanford respectively. Down payments on houses. Wedding expenses. Even a $45,000 payment labeled Catherine medical emergency from just 2 years ago. The same year I'd been denied a $500 loan for an infected tooth that kept me up nights for 3 weeks. I grabbed my phone and called Margaret directly. She picked up on the second ring. I need to understand these bank records, I said without preamble. Are you absolutely certain about the paternity? DNA doesn't lie, honey. I had your sample from the genealogy test, and I was able to obtain samples from all 3 through various means: genealogy sites, public records, a coffee cup. Her voice was matter-of-fact, professional. Robert Whitmore was definitely their biological father. And based on the financial records, he was very much involved in their lives. My stepmother Patricia's face flashed in my mind. The way she pursed her lips whenever I asked Dad for anything. How she'd always made comments about living within our means while wearing designer handbags. The elaborate European vacations they took twice a year. Did Patricia know? I asked. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Well, the bank account these payments came from was joint. Both signatures required for transfers over $2,000. So, yes. She knew. Patricia had sat across from me at countless dinners, watching me eat generic cereal and clearance clothes, knowing full well that my father was bankrolling 3 other children's entire lives. She'd been there when Dad explained why I couldn't have the surgery to fix my deviated septum, nodding sympathetically about tight budgets. The funeral came back in vivid detail. How Patricia had rushed through the will reading, barely giving me time to process that I'd inherited exactly $5,000 and Dad's old watch. How the house, the investments, the vacation property, everything else went to her. At the time, I'd assumed it was because they'd been married 12 years. Now I wondered if she'd been afraid I might start asking questions about where all of Dad's money had actually gone. I walked to my bathroom mirror and stared at my reflection. Same dark hair as Dad. Same green eyes. Same stubborn chin. But apparently, I was the only one of his 4 children who'd been raised to believe that loving parents simply couldn't afford to help their kids succeed. Time to make some phone calls. Rebecca Martinez answered on the 4th ring, sounding breathless like she'd been running. Hello? Hi, this is Sarah Whitmore. I think we might be related. Silence. Then, I'm sorry, who is this? My heart hammered against my ribs. Robert Whitmore's daughter. I just found out about you through a genealogist, and I know this sounds crazy, but... Oh my God. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Sarah? Dad mentioned you a few times, but we were told you didn't want anything to do with us. The room tilted. What? He said you were angry about the divorce, that you'd cut him off years ago. That you'd made it clear you wanted nothing to do with his new family. She paused. Wait, what do you mean you just found out about us? My mouth went dry. Rebecca, I lived with Dad until I was 18. I saw him every week until he died 3 months ago. I never knew you existed. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, that's impossible. He talked about you. He felt terrible about the estrangement. He even showed us pictures: birthdays, Christmas morning, your high school graduation. Pictures. He'd taken pictures of me and shown them to his other children like I was some distant relative he missed. While I was right there, eating dinner with him every Sunday, listening to him explain why he couldn't help with my student loans. Rebecca, I need to ask you something, and please just be honest. Did Dad help you financially? Another pause. Sarah, I don't think this is appropriate. Please. It's important. She sighed. He paid for Northwestern. And he helped with my down payment last year, $30,000. But he always said he wished he could do the same for you, that he tried to reach out but you wouldn't accept his help. I actually laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. He told me we couldn't afford my in-state tuition. Said I needed to take out loans like everyone else. That can't be right. What about James and Catherine? Does he help them too? James just finished his residency at Duke, Dad covered medical school. And Catherine, she had that cancer scare 2 years ago, the experimental treatment? Dad paid for everything. Rebecca's voice grew smaller. Sarah, what's going on? Why are you asking this? Cancer. Catherine had cancer, and Dad paid $45,000 for her treatment. The same year I'd been working overtime at Target to afford antibiotics for bronchitis because I didn't have health insurance. I need James and Catherine's numbers, I said. I don't understand what. Rebecca, our father lied to all of us. He told you I wanted nothing to do with you. He told me you didn't exist. And while he was giving you everything, he was telling me we were too poor to help with anything. My voice cracked. I want to talk to them before I call a lawyer. A lawyer? Sarah, you're scaring me. I stared at Margaret's report, at the highlighted bank transfers, at 15 years of evidence that I'd been systematically erased from my own family's prosperity. How much do you know about Patricia? Dad's wife? She seemed nice at the funeral. Quiet. She sent us each a card afterwards saying Dad had left us some family photos. She sent you cards after the funeral? Well, yes. She had our addresses from Dad's address book. Patricia had their addresses. Had known exactly where to find them, had probably met them before. Had sat through that while reading knowing she was stealing from 4 children, not one. Rebecca, I need those numbers. Today. 2 hours later, I was sitting in my car outside a coffee shop, staring at my phone like it might explode. I'd just finished calls with James and Catherine, and my hands were still shaking. The stories were all the same. Dad had told James the first was difficult and had rejected the family after he remarried. Catherine believed I'd moved across the country and wanted no contact. All 3 of them had been fed carefully crafted lies about why I was never around for holidays, family dinners, or major life events. But the financial details? Those made my stomach turn. James confirmed Dad had paid his entire medical school tuition, $280,000 over 4 years. Plus living expenses. Plus a brand new BMW as a graduation gift last year. Catherine's cancer treatment had actually cost $67,000, not the $45,000 I'd seen in the bank records. And there was more. Dad had bought her a condo in Portland when she turned 23, paid for her wedding to her college sweetheart, and was currently funding her master's degree in social work. The master's degree that cost more per semester than I made in 3 months at my retail job. He always said he wished things were different with you, Catherine had whispered over the phone, crying. He said Patricia tried to reach out, but you'd hang up on her. We thought you hated us. Patricia. Every conversation came back to Patricia. I pulled up the bank records again on Margaret's secure website. Now that I knew what to look for, I could see the pattern more clearly. The payments to my siblings had started exactly 13 years ago, 1 year after Dad married Patricia. Before that, the account showed normal expenses, mortgage payments, utilities, my school clothes, and activities. The shift was dramatic. After Patricia arrived, my allowance stopped. Dad started saying no to things he'd always said yes to before. The family vacations ended. Even my birthday presents became noticeably cheaper, more practical. But money had been flowing out in steady streams to 3 people I didn't know existed. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. James told me about medical school costs. Sarah, I'm so sorry. We had no idea. Can we meet? All 4 of us? Before I could respond, another message from an unknown number. This is Catherine. Rebecca gave me your contact. I can't stop crying. Dad showed us your picture every Christmas and said he missed you. I feel sick. Then James, I'm driving down from Seattle tomorrow. We need to figure this out. Together. I stared at the messages, feeling something crack open in my chest. These weren't the entitled, spoiled siblings I'd imagined while reading those bank records. They were as shocked and hurt as I was. We'd all been victims of the same elaborate deception. But why? Why would Dad create this complex web of lies? Why not just have a relationship with all 4 of his children openly? I thought about Patricia's behavior at the funeral again. How she'd kept checking her watch during the service, like she wanted it over quickly. How she'd avoided eye contact when the lawyer read the will. How she'd hugged me afterward and whispered, your father wanted you to have the watch. He said you'd understand. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now it felt like an insult wrapped in false sentiment. I called Margaret again. I need you to dig deeper into Patricia's finances, I said. Before she married Dad. Her previous marriages, her debts, anything you can find. That'll cost extra. Background investigations are more complex than genealogy. I don't care. And Margaret? I need it fast. I'm meeting with my siblings tomorrow, and I want to know exactly who we're dealing with before I decide how to handle this. Because if Patricia had orchestrated this entire charade, she was about to learn that she'd underestimated the wrong daughter. Margaret called back at 11 p.m., just as I was trying to fall asleep. I'd been staring at the ceiling for 2 hours, my mind cycling through 15 years of we can't afford it while Dad secretly funded 3 other lives. You're going to want to sit down for this, she said without preamble. I was already sitting, but I gripped my phone tighter. What did you find? Patricia wasn't just some woman your father fell in love with. She specifically targeted him. The sound of papers rustling came through the phone. Patricia Chen, yes, we're related, different families though, has a pattern. 3 previous marriages, all to older men with substantial assets. All ended in divorce with hefty settlements. My stomach dropped. She's a professional? Husband number 1, divorced after 2 years, walked away with half his construction business. Husband number 2, for years, got the house and alimony until she remarried. Husband number 3, lasted 18 months, but he died in an accident before divorce proceedings finished. She inherited everything. Jesus Christ. It gets worse. I found her internet history from before she met your father. She was actively using dating sites that specifically cater to wealthy widowers and divorced men. Her profile mentioned loving family men who value loyalty and discretion. Margaret's voice turned grim. Your father wasn't random, Sarah. She found him deliberately. I thought about Dad after Mom died, how lost he'd been. How grateful he'd seemed when Patricia started coming around, bringing casseroles and offering to help with household tasks. I'd been 17, busy with senior year, probably not as attentive as I should have been. There's more, Margaret continued. Those monthly payments to your siblings? They didn't come out of your father's regular income. They came from a separate investment account that Patricia helped him set up after they married. She convinced him to liquidate some of his retirement funds to create it. Why would she encourage him to give money to other kids? That doesn't make sense if she was planning to inherit everything. Because she needed to isolate you specifically. Think about it, if your father had suddenly cut off Rebecca, James, and Catherine after marrying Patricia, they would have been suspicious. They might have investigated, asked questions, maybe even contacted you directly. Papers rustled again. But by maintaining their support while systematically erasing you from their lives and them from yours, she ensured that when inheritance time came, you'd be alone. No siblings to band together with, no one to contest the will alongside you. The manipulation was breathtaking in its scope. Patricia had spent 13 years playing a long game, convincing my father to financially support 3 children who barely questioned his absence from my life, while making sure I felt too ashamed of our supposed poverty to push for more. Sarah, there's something else. Patricia filed preliminary paperwork to sell your father's house 3 weeks before he died. My blood went cold. What? The realtor consultation, property assessment, even staging recommendations. All dated February 8th. Your father died February 23rd. Dad had been sick, but we thought he was getting better. The doctor said his heart attack was sudden, unexpected. But Patricia had been preparing to sell his house while he was still alive. Are you saying she knew he was going to die? I'm saying she was awfully prepared for someone whose husband died unexpectedly. Margaret's voice dropped. I think you need to talk to those siblings of yours sooner rather than later. And Sarah? You might want to consider getting a lawyer involved before you confront Patricia directly. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, pieces clicking together with horrible clarity. The way Patricia had rushed the funeral arrangements, insisting on cremation because Robert would have wanted something simple. How she'd seemed annoyed when I'd asked to keep some of Dad's books, saying we needed to clean house quickly for tax purposes. The speed of the will reading, the way she barely looked at me afterward. I pulled up my laptop and started typing an email to Rebecca, James, and Catherine. Asterisk, we're meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m., Corner Cafe on 5th Street. I have information about Patricia that changes everything. Bring any documentation you have about Dad's payments to you, bank records, cancel checks, anything. We're not just dealing with family lies anymore. We might be dealing with fraud. Asterisk. I hit send before I could second guess myself. Then I opened a new browser tab and searched for criminal defense attorneys in the area. Because if Patricia had been planning Dad's death in advance, this wasn't just about a contested will anymore. This was about murder. The meeting at Corner Cafe felt surreal. Sitting across from 3 strangers who shared my eyes, my stubborn chin, my habit of drumming fingers when nervous. Rebecca had Dad's laugh. James had his way of tilting his head when thinking. Catherine kept pushing her hair behind her ear exactly like I did. We'd been talking for an hour, comparing stories, filling in timeline gaps. The picture emerging was worse than I'd imagined. She called me personally when Dad got sick, James said, stirring his untouched coffee. Said he was asking for all of us, but that visits might be too overwhelming. That he wanted to make peace with the family situation first. Catherine nodded. Same here. Patricia said Dad was working on some kind of letter to you, Sarah. Something about explaining everything and asking forgiveness. She said he wanted to get that right before we all met. There was no letter, I said flatly. And he died thinking you all hated me. Rebecca pulled out her phone. I saved the voicemail she left me the day after the funeral. I thought it was sweet at the time, but now. She hit play. Patricia's voice filled our corner booth. Asterisk, Rebecca, dear, I wanted you to know Robert spoke about you constantly near the end. He was so proud of your nursing career. I know Sarah's grief is complicated, she's always struggled with sharing her father's attention, but I hope in time she'll reach out. I have some photos Robert wanted you to have. Asterisk. My hands clenched into fists. Struggled with sharing attention? I didn't know you existed. There's more, Rebecca whispered. She sent a check with the photos. $5,000 each. Said it was what Dad wanted, his final gift to us. I stared at her. 5,000? That's exactly what I inherited. She made it look like Dad left us all the same amount. James leaned forward. But Sarah, if she was planning to keep us separated, why give us money at all? Why not just disappear after the funeral? I pulled out Margaret's printed report and spread it across the table. Because she needed to make sure you didn't contest the will. Look at these property records. Dad owned 3 rental houses I never knew about. A boat. Investment accounts worth over $2 million. Catherine's face went pale. $2 million? But she told us the estate was mostly the house and some savings. That after taxes and debts, there wasn't much left. She lied. And those $5,000 checks? They're probably legally considered acceptance of your inheritance portion. By cashing them, you might have waived your right to challenge the will. Rebecca's coffee cup hit the table hard. I deposited mine yesterday. I did mine this morning, James said quietly. Catherine was already pulling out her phone. Mine's still in my purse at home. I was going to deposit it tonight. Don't, I said quickly. Margaret thinks those checks might be a legal trap. We need a lawyer to look at them first. I told them about Patricia's history, the 3 previous husbands, the dating sites targeting wealthy widowers. About the house being listed for sale weeks before Dad died. About the separate investment account she'd convinced him to create. She's been planning this for over a decade, I finished. Every lie, every manipulation, every dollar she convinced Dad to spend on you while denying me, it was all designed to isolate us from each other so we couldn't unite against her when inheritance time came. James was staring at his hands. The BMW Dad bought me for graduation. Patricia picked it out. Said Dad wanted something safe and reliable for his son the doctor. She even came to the dealership with me. And my condo, Catherine added slowly. Patricia found the real estate agent. Said she knew the Portland market better than Dad did. A horrible thought occurred to me. What if the money she was giving you wasn't even Dad's idea? What if she was spending his money deliberately, draining the accounts while making him think he was being a generous father? Rebecca's eyes widened. The nursing school payments. Dad always sent them through Patricia because she handled the finances. I never talked to him directly about money. Same here, James said. Patricia managed all the transfers. Said Dad was too busy with work to handle banking details. I pulled out my phone and called Margaret, putting it on speaker. She answered immediately. Margaret, I'm here with my siblings. We need to know, is there any way to trace whether those payments to Rebecca, James, and Catherine were actually authorized by our father, or if Patricia was making them without his knowledge? That's actually a brilliant question. Bank records show electronic transfers, but they don't show who physically initiated them. If Patricia had online access and your father's account information. Margaret paused. Sarah, if she was making unauthorized payments to deliberately drain his assets while he thought money was tight, that's embezzlement. That's a federal crime. Catherine grabbed my arm. The medical bills for my cancer treatment. When I called to thank Dad, he sounded confused. Asked me to repeat what the doctor had said, like he didn't remember the conversation about my diagnosis. He might not have, I said, the pieces clicking together. Because Patricia might have made that whole thing up. James was already pulling out his laptop. I'm calling Duke right now. I want to see exactly who paid my tuition and when. Rebecca stood up abruptly. I need to call my bank. If I've been unknowingly participating in fraud for 13 years, I need to know. Now. As my siblings scattered to make phone calls, I sat alone with Margaret's report spread across the sticky cafe table. Patricia hadn't just stolen my inheritance, she'd stolen my entire family, manufactured a decade of fake financial struggles, and possibly committed multiple felonies in the process. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated how much 4 angry siblings could accomplish when they finally found each other. The phone calls confirmed our worst fears. James discovered that Patricia had been listed as the authorized representative on his tuition account since sophomore year of college. Rebecca's nursing school had all correspondence going through an email address that belonged to Patricia, not Dad. And Catherine's cancer treatment? The hospital billing department had no record of any experimental therapy costing $67,000. They said I was treated under standard insurance coverage, Catherine reported, her voice shaking. The most we ever paid out of pocket was $1,200. But Patricia sent me documentation showing $45,000 in medical bills. Fake bills, I said grimly. She was stealing from Dad and using you 3 as cover stories. James slammed his laptop shut. That BMW? The dealership has Patricia Chen listed as the primary buyer. Dad's name isn't even on the paperwork, just the loan documents. My phone rang. Margaret. Sarah, I've been digging deeper into those bank records, and there's a problem. A big one. Her voice was tight with urgency. The joint account Patricia used for those transfers to your siblings? Your father's signature on the authorization documents doesn't match his signature on any earlier paperwork. What are you saying? I'm saying Patricia may have forged his signature to get access to his investment accounts. And if that's true, every payment to Rebecca, James, and Catherine was made without his knowledge or consent. Margaret paused. But here's the thing, if your father never actually authorized those payments, your siblings could be considered unwitting participants in money laundering. The blood drained from Rebecca's face. Are you saying we could be charged with crimes? For money we didn't know was stolen? Unlikely, given the circumstances, but Patricia probably counted on exactly that fear to keep you quiet if you ever found out the truth, Margaret continued. She created a paper trail that makes it look like your father was voluntarily impoverishing himself for his other children while neglecting Sarah. Perfect cover for systematic theft. I thought about the family dinners where Dad would apologize for not being able to help with my college applications, the way his shoulders would slump when he explained that money was just too tight this year. He hadn't been choosing my siblings over me, he'd been a victim too. Catherine suddenly grabbed my arm. Wait. If Patricia was forging Dad's signatures and stealing his money, what about his will? How do we know that's legitimate? The table went silent. None of us had thought to question the will itself. Margaret, who witnessed Dad's will signature. Let me check the probate filing, here it is. 2 witnesses, Patricia's sister Monica Chen and a notary named David Reeves. Her sister? That's not suspicious at all, James muttered. Rebecca was already typing on her phone. I'm looking up David Reeves, notary public, oh my god. Guys, his license was suspended 6 months ago for falsifying documents. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too warm. We were dealing with a criminal conspiracy that went far deeper than a greedy stepmother hiding assets. This was organized fraud spanning more than a decade. There's something else, Margaret said. I found Patricia's phone records from the week your father died. She made 17 calls to a number registered to Memorial Gardens Funeral Home. The first call was made 2 days before your father's death. My hand started shaking. 2 days before? And Sarah? Those cremation arrangements she insisted on? I checked with the funeral director. Patricia signed the authorization forms and paid for expedited cremation before your father's body was even released from the hospital. Rebecca covered her mouth with her hand. She was planning the funeral before he died. Planning everything, I whispered, staring at the evidence spread across our table. Bank fraud, forged signatures, falsified medical bills, possibly even a forged will. And if Patricia had been making funeral arrangements before Dad's death. We need to call the police, Catherine said quietly. This isn't just about inheritance anymore. If she was planning his funeral in advance, and she had access to all his medications, and she stood to inherit everything. She couldn't finish the sentence. None of us could say it out loud yet. But we were all thinking the same thing. Patricia might have killed our father. The police station felt like a foreign country where I didn't speak the language. Detective Maria Santos had been listening to our story for 45 minutes, occasionally taking notes, her expression growing more serious with each revelation we shared. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, she said, reviewing her notepad. You're alleging that Patricia Whitmore systematically defrauded your father's estate over 13 years, forged financial documents, potentially falsified his will, and may have been planning his death in advance. When she put it like that, it sounded insane. But Rebecca nodded firmly. Detective, I'm a registered nurse. I know what normal grief looks like, and Patricia's behavior at the hospital was off. She kept asking about Dad's medication schedule, when the doctors would be back, whether anyone else had visiting access. And the funeral home calls, James added. Who makes 17 calls to plan a cremation before their husband is even dead? Detective Santos set down her pen. I understand your suspicions, but I need you to understand something. Your father died of cardiac arrest. The hospital ran standard blood work, no unusual substances, no signs of foul play. Without evidence of actual poisoning or physical harm, proving murder would be nearly impossible. My heart sank, but she continued. However, financial fraud? Forgery? Those are crimes we can investigate immediately. She pulled out a business card. I'm referring you to Detective Kim Chen in our white-collar crime division. If even half of what you're telling me is true, Patricia Whitmore has committed multiple felonies. An hour later, we were sitting in Detective Chen's office, no relation to Patricia or Margaret. Apparently Chen was just a common name. Detective Chen was younger than Santos, with sharp eyes that missed nothing as she examined Margaret's documentation. This forged signature alone is enough for a warrant, she said, comparing Dad's real signature to the bank authorization forms. But I want to be thorough before we move. Financial crimes are easier to prosecute when we have overwhelming evidence. She leaned back in her chair. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to freeze Patricia's assets immediately. She can't sell that house or move any money while this is under investigation. We'll subpoena complete bank records going back 15 years, not just the partial records your genealogist obtained. And we're going to audit every single transaction. Catherine raised her hand tentatively. What about us? Are we in trouble for accepting the money? Unlikely. You were victims of the fraud, not participants. But I'll need you to return any funds you still have and provide complete cooperation with the investigation. Detective Chen's expression softened slightly. I know this is overwhelming, but you've done the right thing coming forward. James cleared his throat. Detective, there's something else. Patricia told us at the funeral that Dad left us some family photos. We were supposed to pick them up next week. Should we still do that? Absolutely. But you won't be going alone. Detective Chen smiled grimly. We're going to wire one of you and have backup nearby. If Patricia thinks she's gotten away with this, she might say something incriminating when she hands over those photos. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Sarah, this is Patricia. I've been thinking about your father's things in the attic. There are some boxes that might interest you. Would you like to come by tomorrow afternoon to look through them? I showed the message to Detective Chen. Her eyebrows shot up. Well, that's convenient timing. She forwarded the message to her computer and started typing rapidly. Either she's genuinely trying to be nice, or she's worried you're getting suspicious and wants to control the narrative. Rebecca leaned over to read the message. She's never offered Sarah anything before. At the funeral, she acted like Dad barely had any possessions worth keeping. Exactly, Detective Chen said. Sarah, how do you feel about wearing a wire tomorrow? My hands were trembling, but my voice came out steady. I want to hear what she has to say. Especially about those boxes in the attic that supposedly contain Dad's things. I looked around at my siblings, still such a strange concept. If she killed our father and stole 13 years of our lives, I want her to face justice. Detective Chen nodded approvingly. Then let's catch her in the act. As we left the police station, James grabbed my arm gently. Are you sure about this? If Patricia really is dangerous. She's had 13 years to hurt me and never tried physical violence, I said. She's too smart for that. Her weapon was manipulation, not force. I thought about all those family dinners where she'd watched Dad apologize for our supposed poverty while knowing she was stealing thousands every month. Besides, I'm not going in alone. And I'm not the same person I was a week ago. Rebecca squeezed my other arm. None of us are. We have each other now. For the first time since Dad died, I felt like I wasn't facing the world alone. Tomorrow, I'd walk into Patricia's web of lies with a wire taped to my chest and 3 siblings backing me up. She'd underestimated me for years. Tomorrow, I'd return the favor. The wire felt strange against my skin, a small reminder of how surreal my life had become in just 1 week. Detective Chen had coached me for an hour on what to say, what not to say, and how to guide Patricia toward incriminating herself without being obvious about it. Remember, Detective Chen had said as she tested the audio feed one final time, she's had years to perfect her lies. Don't expect her to confess immediately. Just get her talking about the money, about your father's finances, about why she never mentioned your siblings. Now I stood on Patricia's front porch, Dad's front porch, really, though she'd already changed the welcome mat to something with flowers instead of his old home sweet home one. I could see the real estate sign partially hidden behind the hedge. Margaret had been right, Patricia was moving fast. She opened the door before I could knock, smiling that same thin smile she'd worn at the funeral. Sarah, honey, come in. I've got coffee brewing. The house smelled different. Dad's aftershave was gone, replaced by some vanilla candle that made everything too sweet. She'd already packed away his reading glasses from the side table, removed his favorite throw blanket from the couch. You're redecorating quickly, I said, following her to the kitchen. Patricia's laugh sounded forced. Oh, you know how it is. Keeping his things around just makes the grief harder. I'm sure you understand. I accepted the coffee mug, noting it was one I'd never seen before. Even Dad's dish set was being replaced. Actually, I wanted to ask you about some things I've been wondering about since the funeral. Of course, dear. What's on your mind? Money, I said directly, watching her face. Her smile flickered for just a moment. I've been going through Dad's old papers, trying to understand his finances better. For tax purposes. Tax purposes? Patricia sat down across from me, her posture suddenly more rigid. Well, the IRS wants documentation of his assets for estate tax calculations. But some of the numbers aren't adding up. I pulled out a notebook, Detective Chen's idea to look official. Like, his income was pretty substantial, but I remember growing up with him always saying we couldn't afford things. Did he have gambling debts or something? Patricia's coffee cup clinked against her saucer. Sarah, your father was very private about money. Even with me. I know he felt terrible about not being able to help you more, but men of his generation, they have pride about these things. Right, but here's what's confusing me. I flipped through my fake notes. I found records of large monthly transfers going back years. Thousands of dollars at a time. Do you know what those might have been for? The color drained from Patricia's face, but she recovered quickly. Probably investments. Robert was always moving money between accounts, trying to maximize returns. Very smart with finances, your father. These weren't to investment accounts though. They were to individuals. I met her eyes directly. Patricia, did Dad have other children? The silence stretched for 30 seconds. I could hear the kitchen clock ticking, the refrigerator humming, my own heartbeat in my ears. Where did you get that idea? Patricia's voice was carefully controlled. The bank records. Regular payments to Rebecca Martinez, James Whitmore, Catherine Whitmore. 4 years. I kept my tone neutral, curious rather than accusatory. Were they relatives? Cousins maybe? Patricia stood up abruptly, walking to the window with her back to me. Your father had a complicated past, Sarah. Before we married, he'd made some commitments. Financial obligations from previous relationships. What kind of obligations? She turned around, and for the first time, her mask slipped completely. Her expression was cold, calculating. The kind that a smart wife helps her husband manage discreetly. Robert felt guilty about those children, but he also knew that dwelling on past mistakes would only hurt his current family. Current family. As if I'd been his priority when she'd been systematically isolating me from my siblings while draining his accounts. So you knew about them, I said. This whole time, you knew I had siblings, and you never told me. Half-siblings, Patricia corrected sharply. And what would have been the point? They had their own lives, their own mothers. Robert wanted to support them financially, his conscience demanded it, but that didn't mean disrupting everyone's peace by forcing awkward family reunions. I felt sick listening to her rewrite history so smoothly. Did Dad know you were lying to me about our finances? When he told me we couldn't afford college, did he know you were sending thousands to Rebecca for nursing school? Patricia's eyes narrowed. Sarah, I think you're confused about. Because I talked to them, I interrupted, letting my anger show for the first time. I found Rebecca, James, and Catherine. We compared stories, Patricia. We know about Duke Medical School, about the BMW, about the cancer treatment that cost $67,000. She went completely still. You contacted them? They're my siblings. Of course I contacted them. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. What I want to know is why you spent 13 years convincing my father we were too poor to help me while you were forging his signatures to send his money to children he barely saw. Forging? Patricia's voice pitched higher. Sarah, you're clearly upset about the inheritance, but making accusations. The signature analysis has already been done, I lied smoothly. Bank fraud is a federal crime, Patricia. So is identity theft. So is. She lunged forward, grabbing my wrist hard enough to bruise. You little bitch. You have no idea what you're playing with. And there it was. The real Patricia, finally showing herself. You want to know the truth? Patricia's grip tightened on my wrist, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my skin. Your precious father was a weak, guilty fool. Those payments weren't love, they were conscience money. He abandoned those children when they were babies, and spending money on them from a distance made him feel better about being a deadbeat dad. I tried to pull away, but she held firm. The wire pressed against my ribs, hopefully catching every word. And you, she continued, her voice dripping with venom, you were the constant reminder of his failures. Every time he looked at you, he saw your mother's death, his inability to hold a marriage together, his pattern of creating children he couldn't properly care for. Why do you think he was so eager to remarry? He needed someone to handle the messy parts of his life. Let go of me. My voice was steadier than I felt. Patricia released my wrist but didn't step back. Do you know what I found when I met your father? A broken man drowning in guilt, spending his retirement money on children who barely spoke to him, while his actual daughter, the one living under his roof, made him feel like a failure every day just by existing. The cruelty was breathtaking. She'd rewritten 13 years of psychological manipulation as mercy. So you decided to help by stealing his money? I helped by giving him peace. Patricia's composure was completely gone now. Those monthly payments were bleeding him dry. He was going to end up in poverty, supporting ungrateful children who only called when they needed tuition money. I streamlined the process. Streamlined theft, you mean? I managed his assets intelligently, she snapped. Robert signed those authorization forms willingly. He wanted me to handle the finances because money management stressed him out. If he didn't read every detail before signing, that's not fraud, that's trust. I thought about Dad's confused expression when Catherine had thanked him for her cancer treatment, how he'd seemed lost whenever I'd asked about our supposed financial problems. He hadn't known what Patricia was doing with his accounts. What about the will, Patricia? Did he really leave everything to you, or did you manage that paperwork too? For just a moment, panic flashed across her face. Robert's will was properly executed with valid witnesses. Your sister Monica and a notary whose license was suspended for falsifying documents? The kitchen went dead silent. Patricia's face cycled through several expressions, surprise, calculation, and finally resignation. She walked slowly to the counter, her back to me, and when she turned around, she was holding a large chef's knife. You should have taken your $5,000 and walked away, Sarah. That was generous. More than generous, considering your father never actually wanted you to inherit anything meaningful. My mouth went dry. Patricia, put the knife down. You know what your father said to me the night before he died? She held the knife casually, like she was about to chop vegetables. He said he wished he'd been brave enough to cut ties with all his children years ago. That supporting Rebecca, James, and Catherine had been a mistake that cost him his relationship with you. That guilt was eating him alive. That's not true. He said he wanted to change everything. Stop the payments, revise his will, start over with just us. Patricia's smile was serene, terrifying. Poor Robert. All that stress about family drama probably contributed to his heart attack. Guilt can be so damaging to a person's health. The implication hit me like ice water. You killed him. I gave him peace, she repeated, stepping closer. And I would have given you peace too, if you just accepted your inheritance like a good girl and moved on with your life. But you had to go digging. You had to contact them. The kitchen felt smaller with every step she took toward me. I backed toward the door, trying to remember what Detective Chen had told me about emergency signals. The police already know, Patricia. About the forged signatures, about the timeline, about everything. Hurting me won't change that. The police know what you told them, she said dismissively. Theories and suspicions from a grieving daughter who's angry about her inheritance. But if something unfortunate happens to you today, a break-in, perhaps, a robbery gone wrong, well, grief makes people do dangerous things. Like meeting strangers from the internet who claim to be family. My blood froze. She was going to kill me and frame my siblings. Rebecca, James, and Catherine don't even know where I am today, I lied desperately. Patricia laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, honey. I've been monitoring your phone since the funeral. Those touching family reunion texts, the coffee shop meeting, even your little police station visit yesterday. Did you really think I wouldn't keep tabs on Robert's beneficiaries? She'd been watching us the entire time. Every move we'd made, every revelation we'd uncovered, she'd known about it all. You made one mistake though, she continued, raising the knife slightly. You assumed I was just a greedy widow who got lucky. But Sarah, I've been planning your father's death since our second anniversary. Everything else, the siblings, the money, the isolation, that was just preparation for this moment. The kitchen door suddenly exploded inward as Detective Chen burst through, gun drawn, 3 officers behind her. Patricia Whitmore, drop the weapon. Drop it now. Patricia spun toward them, knife still in hand, and for one terrifying second I thought she might actually fight 4 armed police officers. Instead, she smiled that same thin smile she'd worn at Dad's funeral and let the knife clatter to the floor. I suppose, she said calmly, it's time to call my lawyer. The holding cell at the police station felt surreal. Not for me. I was sitting in Detective Chen's office, still shaking from adrenaline, but knowing Patricia was just down the hall in handcuffs made everything feel like a bad movie I'd accidentally wandered into. The wire picked up everything, Detective Chen said, reviewing the audio transcript. Confession to financial fraud, implied admission to murder, and threatening you with a deadly weapon. Her lawyer's going to have a hell of a time explaining this away. My siblings had arrived within an hour of Patricia's arrest, all of them pale and worried. Rebecca kept apologizing for not answering her phone. She'd been at work and missed my emergency text. James drove down from Seattle in record time, probably breaking several speed limits. Catherine looked like she might throw up. I can't believe she was monitoring our phones, Catherine said for the 3rd time. She knew about all of it. The coffee shop, the police station, everything. Detective Chen nodded grimly. We found sophisticated tracking software on Robert's old phone, which she kept active on your family plan. She's been watching Sarah's communications for months, probably since the funeral. Very thorough. But why? Rebecca asked. If she thought she'd gotten away with everything, why keep monitoring Sarah? Because she knew Sarah was the biggest threat, James said quietly. We were satisfied with our inheritance checks and the story about Sarah rejecting the family. But Sarah lived with Dad. She knew his actual financial situation, his habits, his personality. If anyone was going to spot the inconsistencies, it would be her. I thought about all those Sunday dinners with Dad and Patricia, how she'd watch me whenever I asked Dad about money or college or medical bills. At the time, I'd assumed she was just annoyed by my requests. Now I realized she'd been calculating, measuring how much I suspected. Detective Chen's phone rang. She answered it, listened for a moment, then hung up with a grim expression. That was the coroner's office. Given Patricia's confession and the suspicious circumstances, they're going to exhume your father's body for a full toxicology screening. The room went silent. Even though we'd all been thinking it, hearing it stated so bluntly was devastating. How long will that take? I asked. 2 to 3 weeks for complete results. But Sarah, I need to prepare you. If she did poison him, proving it might still be difficult. Many toxins break down quickly, and with cremation scheduled so fast. She trailed off diplomatically. But we have her confession on tape, Rebecca pointed out. We have her saying she gave him peace and making implications about stress causing his heart attack. Good evidence, but not a direct admission of poisoning. Detective Chen pulled out a thick folder. However, the financial crimes are airtight. Forged signatures, identity theft, bank fraud, wire fraud, she's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum, even without the murder charges. James leaned forward. What about the inheritance? The will? That's where things get complicated. Detective Chen opened the folder, revealing stacks of legal documents. Patricia's lawyer is claiming the will is valid regardless of her other crimes. She says Robert signed it willingly, and her sister Monica swears she witnessed it properly. My heart sank. So she might keep everything? Not necessarily. We found something interesting in Robert's safety deposit box this morning. Detective Chen pulled out a handwritten document. A letter, dated 3 days before his death, stating his intention to revise his will to include his other children. He wanted to divide his estate equally among all 4 of you. Catherine gasped. He wrote that 3 days before he died? Bank records show he visited the safety deposit box that afternoon, alone. Patricia didn't know about this letter. It was in a sealed envelope marked, "For my children," in his handwriting. Detective Chen handed me the letter. Sarah, would you like to read it aloud? My hands trembled as I unfolded Dad's familiar handwriting. Asterisk to my children, all of them. I've made terrible mistakes. Patricia convinced me that keeping you apart was protecting you from complicated family drama, but I see now that I was a coward. Sarah, you deserve to know about your siblings. Rebecca, James, Catherine, you deserve to know about each other and about Sarah. I've been planning to bring you all together, to split my estate properly, and to ask forgiveness for 13 years of lies. If something happens to me before I can fix this, please know that I loved you all equally, even when I was too weak to show it. The money Patricia managed for me, I thought it was going toward your futures. I pray I was right about that. Love, Dad. Asterisk. By the time I finished reading, all 4 of us were crying. This changes everything, Detective Chen said softly. Combined with evidence of Patricia's fraud, this letter provides clear evidence of Robert's true intentions. No court is going to uphold a will that directly contradicts the deceased's written wishes, especially when the beneficiary stands accused of murdering him. The estate would be ours. All of ours, equally, just like Dad had wanted. But first, we had to bury our father all over again. The exhumation was scheduled for Tuesday morning. Detective Chen called Monday night with an update that made my blood run cold. We found something in Patricia's computer files, she said without preamble. A folder labeled estate planning with documents dating back 6 months before your father's death. Detailed research on digitalis poisoning, how it mimics heart attack symptoms, and where to obtain foxglove plants. I sank onto my couch, phone pressed to my ear. Foxglove? Natural source of digitalis. Causes cardiac arrest in the right doses, and it's nearly undetectable in routine blood work unless you're specifically testing for plant-based toxins. Detective Chen's voice was grim. The really disturbing part? She also researched your family's medical histories. All four of you. Blood types, known allergies, genetic predispositions. Why would she need our medical information? We're not sure yet, but given her pattern of long-term planning. The detective paused. Sarah, I think your father wasn't her endgame. I think you and your siblings were always meant to be next. The room tilted. What do you mean? Think about it. For adult children discovering they've been defrauded, potentially hiring lawyers, definitely asking questions. Even if she'd successfully kept you separated, eventually someone would have investigated the financial discrepancies. Much cleaner to eliminate the problems entirely. Rebecca's voice suddenly came through my speakerphone. I'd conferenced her in without realizing. Detective Chen, this is Rebecca Martinez. I've been listening, and I need to tell you something. Last week, before we all met up, Patricia called me directly. What did she say? She invited me to visit sometime, said she wanted to share stories about Dad. But she was very specific about wanting to cook for me, kept mentioning this family recipe Dad had loved. She asked about my food allergies twice. James's voice joined the call. She contacted me too. Said she was planning a memorial garden at the house and wanted my input as the doctor in the family. Asked detailed questions about which plants would be meaningful, whether I had any botanical knowledge. My hand started shaking. Catherine, did she reach out to you? Saturday morning, Catherine whispered. She said she found some of Dad's old photographs and wanted to invite all of us over for dinner this week to share memories. She was very insistent about cooking, said she wanted to use Dad's favorite recipes. Detective Chen's voice cut through our growing panic. She was planning to poison all four of you. Probably at some touching family memorial dinner where she'd play the grieving stepmother, bringing everyone together. With your father already dead and his children dying tragically of apparent heart defects, genetic predisposition, how sad, she'd inherit everything without question. The scope of Patricia's plan was staggering. Not just theft, not just one murder, but a calculated genocide of Dad's entire bloodline. The good news, Detective Chen continued, is that this gives us even more evidence of premeditation. Multiple counts of attempted murder, conspiracy, and now we have probable cause to search her property for foxglove plants. What about the dinner invitations? I asked. Are we safe now that she's in custody? She made bail this morning. The phone nearly slipped from my hands. What? Her lawyer argued she wasn't a flight risk, and unfortunately, threatening you with a knife isn't considered as serious as actual assault. The judge set bail at $200,000, and Patricia's sister posted it within an hour. Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. She's out? She's out, and she's probably desperate, Detective Chen confirmed. The toxicology results from your father's exhumation won't be back for 2 weeks, but she knows we're building a case. If she's planning to run, or if she's planning to finish what she started with you for, she'll do it soon. My apartment suddenly felt exposed, vulnerable. Every shadow seemed threatening. What do we do? James asked. You disappear, Detective Chen said firmly. All four of you, together, somewhere Patricia can't find you. I'll have patrol cars monitoring her movements, but given her history of surveillance technology, I can't guarantee she won't track you down. For 2 weeks? Catherine's voice cracked. We're supposed to hide for 2 weeks. However long it takes to put her away permanently, Detective Chen replied. Because Sarah, if those toxicology results come back positive for digitalis, Patricia Whitmore isn't just facing fraud charges anymore. She's facing the death penalty. The safe house Detective Chen arranged turned out to be a cramped cabin in the mountains, 40 miles outside the city. No cell service, no internet, just 4 confused siblings trying to process that our stepmother had planned to murder us all at a family dinner. I keep thinking about the menu she described, Rebecca said for the 100th time, pacing the tiny living room. Herb-crusted chicken, roasted vegetables, homemade tea blend. She was so specific about the tea. James looked up from the case files Detective Chen had given us to review. Foxglove tea would taste bitter, but if she mixed it with strong herbs like mint or chamomile. He shuddered. We'd never have known. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at Dad's letter for what felt like the 1,000th time. 3 days before his death, he'd written about bringing us all together. 3 days later, he was dead. The timing felt too coincidental to ignore. What if she knew about this letter? I asked suddenly. Catherine looked up from where she'd been organizing the financial documents. What do you mean? Dad wrote this 3 days before he died. What if Patricia found out he was planning to change his will? What if that's why she killed him when she did? James set down his papers. But how would she have known? Detective Chen said the letter was in his safety deposit box, and only Dad had access. Bank security cameras, I said, the pieces clicking together. Patricia could have followed him, watched him go to the safety deposit box. Even if she couldn't see what he put in there, she'd know he was hiding something important. Rebecca stopped pacing. And if she thought he was changing his will to include us? She'd have to act fast, I finished. Kill him before he could make it official, then deal with us later if we became a problem. My phone buzzed. Somehow we had 1 bar of service in this corner of the cabin. Text from an unknown number. Sarah, this is Detective Chen's partner, Officer Martinez. She asked me to update you. Patricia Whitmore violated her bail conditions. She's missing. The blood drained from my face. She's gone. James grabbed my phone, reading the message. Violated bail how? I called the number back immediately. Officer Martinez answered on the first ring. Officer Martinez? This is Sarah Whitmore. What happened? Patricia was supposed to report to pretrial services this morning at 9 a.m. She never showed. When we went to her sister's house where she was staying, Monica Chen said Patricia left yesterday evening and never came back. His voice was tense. We found her car abandoned at a hiking trail about 15 miles from your location. My stomach dropped. 15 miles from here? How does she know where we are? We're not sure yet, but Detective Chen wants you to pack immediately. We're moving you to a new location. Through the cabin's front window, I could see thick pine forest stretching in every direction. 15 miles through wilderness terrain wasn't impossible, especially for someone desperate enough to risk everything on one final gambit. Rebecca was already throwing clothes into her bag. How long do we have? Backup is en route, ETA 20 minutes, Officer Martinez said. But if she's been tracking you somehow, if she knows exactly where. The line went dead. James tried his phone. No service. Catherine's phone showed the same, no bars, no connection. She's jamming our signals, James said quietly. That's why Detective Chen's call cut off. From somewhere in the forest around us came the distant sound of a car engine, growing closer. Patricia had found us. The car engine grew louder, then stopped somewhere beyond the tree line. In the sudden silence, I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. How many rounds? James whispered, checking the revolver Detective Chen had left with us. 6, I replied, my voice barely audible. She said only use it if absolutely necessary. Rebecca was peering through the kitchen window's edge, careful not to show herself. I can't see anything, but there's definitely someone moving through the trees about 50 yards out. Catherine had gone completely pale. Maybe it's the backup officers? 20 minutes away, I reminded her. And they'd announce themselves, not sneak through the forest. The cabin suddenly felt like a trap instead of a refuge. One way in, one way out, surrounded by dense wilderness that Patricia apparently knew better than we did. She'd had time to plan this, to figure out our location, to position herself for whatever final move she was planning. There, Rebecca hissed, pointing toward a gap in the trees. Dark jacket, moving parallel to the driveway. I caught a glimpse of movement, definitely human, definitely trying to stay hidden. But something was wrong with the positioning. If Patricia wanted to attack the cabin, she'd approach from the back where there were no windows. This felt more like. She's hurting us, I realized with growing horror. Making noise on this side to push us toward the back door. James immediately moved to the rear window. Shit. There's another one back here. Another one? My blood went ice cold. Patricia didn't come alone. Through the back window, I could see a second figure in a brown coat, crouched behind a fallen log about 30 feet from the cabin's rear exit. The coordination was too precise to be coincidental, this was a planned pincer movement. Monica, Rebecca whispered. Patricia's sister. She posted bail, she probably drove the getaway car, and now they're both here to finish what Patricia started, I finished grimly. The cabin had exactly 2 exits, front and back, and both were being watched. We were trapped between 2 women who'd already committed murder and had nothing left to lose. My phone suddenly buzzed with a text message. Somehow 1 bar of service had returned. Patricia Whitmore, Sarah, let's talk. Just you. Come out the front door alone, and your siblings stay safe. You have 2 minutes to decide. I showed the message to the others. James immediately shook his head. Absolutely not. She's not negotiating, she's isolating. Classic predator behavior. But what if she's telling the truth? Catherine asked desperately. What if she'll really let the rest of you go? Rebecca grabbed my arm. Sarah, think about what Detective Chen found on her computer. Research on all our medical histories, plans for family dinner, multiple murder plots. She's not here to make deals. Another text arrived, 1 minute 40 seconds. Monica has a clear shot at the back door. Don't test me. The woman in the brown coat, Monica, had indeed shifted position, now clearly visible with what looked like a hunting rifle pointed directly at the rear exit. Patricia's coordination with her sister was seamless, professional. They'd done this before. She's going to kill me either way, I said quietly, checking the revolver's safety. But if I go out there, at least you 3 have a chance when the backup arrives. No. James's voice was firm. We stick together. That's what Dad would have wanted. Dad's letter was still folded in my pocket, his words about loving all his children equally, about regretting the years of separation Patricia had orchestrated. She'd stolen 13 years of our family. She'd murdered our father. She tried to steal our inheritance and frame us for fraud. I wasn't giving her 1 more minute of power over the Whitmore family. New plan, I said, moving toward the kitchen where Detective Chen had shown us the cabin's emergency features. This place has a panic room. The panic room was barely larger than a closet, hidden behind a false wall in the kitchen pantry. Detective Chen had shown us the mechanism during our arrival briefing, push the hidden lever behind the flour canister, and a section of the wall would swing inward to reveal a reinforced steel chamber with its own air supply and communication system. Designed for witness protection situations, she'd explained. If someone finds the safe house, you can lock yourselves in and contact emergency services directly through a hardline connection that can't be jammed. Now, as Patricia's 2-minute deadline ticked down, that panic room felt like our only option. The 4 of us crowded into the cramped space, James pulling the wall closed behind us just as my phone buzzed with another message. Time's up, Sarah. Very disappointed in your choice. The hardline phone worked exactly as Detective Chen had promised. I dialed 911 and immediately got through to dispatch. This is Sarah Whitmore at the Pineview safe house. 2 armed suspects are surrounding the building. Detective Chen arranged our protection here, we need immediate backup. Units are already en route to your location, estimated arrival in 12 minutes, the dispatcher replied. Stay on the line and keep the panic room sealed until officers give the all-clear signal. 12 minutes. I closed my eyes, trying to calculate whether the steel door would hold that long against whatever Patricia had planned. My question was answered 30 seconds later when something exploded against the cabin's front wall, rattling the entire structure. Through the panic room's tiny ventilation grate, I could smell smoke. They're trying to burn us out, Rebecca whispered, her nursing training kicking in. Smoke inhalation will force us to come out long before the fire actually reaches this room. Another explosion, this time against the back wall. The smell of gasoline was unmistakable now. They weren't just setting random fires, they were systematically dousing the cabin's perimeter with accelerant. Catherine was hyperventilating. We're going to die in here. No, we're not, James said firmly, examining the panic room's walls. This chamber has independent air filtration. Even if the whole cabin burns down around us, we can survive in here for hours. But even as he said it, I could see the sweat beading on his forehead. The temperature was already rising noticeably. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Patricia, steel doesn't burn, but it conducts heat beautifully. How long do you think you can stay in there as the temperature climbs? 2 hours? 3? She was right, and we all knew it. The panic room might protect us from smoke and flames, but if she kept the fires burning long enough, we'd cook like food in an oven. There has to be another way out, I said, running my hands along the steel walls. Emergency exit, service tunnel, something. Rebecca was examining the communication panel. Sarah, look at this. She pointed to a small digital display I hadn't noticed before. It's showing external temperature readings. Front wall, 89 degrees. Back wall, 92 degrees. And climbing. The cabin had been burning for less than 5 minutes, and the heat was already penetrating our supposedly safe shelter. James pulled out his phone, checking for any signal. Still nothing. She's maintaining the jamming even while setting the fires. Another explosion, closer this time. The panic room's lights flickered, and for one terrifying moment, I thought we'd lost power entirely. Then the emergency lighting kicked in, bathing us in an eerie red glow. Front wall, 97 degrees, Rebecca reported, her voice tight with fear. Through the ventilation grate, I could hear Patricia's voice, amplified by some kind of megaphone. Sarah, you're making this much harder than it needs to be. Walk out now, and I promise your siblings will have enough time to escape before the roof collapses. The steel walls were definitely warming now. I could feel the heat through my palm when I pressed it against the metal. She's not bluffing about the roof, James said grimly. If the support beams are compromised. Back wall, 104 degrees, Rebecca announced. 10 more minutes until backup arrived. 10 minutes might as well be 10 hours if the panic room turned into a furnace first. That's when Catherine, who'd been quietly studying the communication panel, suddenly spoke up. What if we don't wait for rescue? What if we don't wait for rescue? Catherine repeated, pointing to a section of the communication panel I hadn't noticed. This isn't just a phone system, it's connected to the cabin's security network. Cameras, motion sensors, even the sprinkler system. James leaned over her shoulder, studying the display. You're right. We can see exactly where they are. The external cameras showed Patricia and Monica positioned strategically around the burning cabin, Patricia near the front with what looked like a flamethrower, Monica covering the back with her rifle. But they'd made one critical mistake, they were standing directly under the cabin's emergency sprinkler heads. Can we activate the sprinklers remotely? I asked. Catherine's fingers flew over the control panel. Not just activate them, I can control which zones fire and when. If we hit them with a coordinated spray, they'll be blinded and disoriented, Rebecca finished. Long enough for us to get out and reach the tree line. Back wall, 112 degrees, the display announced automatically. We were running out of time. Do it, I said, gripping the revolver. All zones, full pressure, on my count. Catherine positioned her finger over the activation switch. Through the security monitors, I watched Patricia check her watch, probably calculating how much longer the heat torture would take. She had no idea we could see her every movement. 3, I whispered. 2. 1. Now. Water exploded from every sprinkler head simultaneously, catching both women completely off guard. Patricia stumbled backward, dropping her flamethrower as high-pressure water knocked her to the ground. Monica spun toward the sound, temporarily blinded, her rifle swinging wildly. Go, go, go. We burst out of the panic room and straight through the cabin's front door while Patricia was still struggling to her feet in the muddy chaos. The fires were already dying under the sprinkler system's assault, filling the air with thick steam that provided perfect cover. I kept the revolver trained on Patricia as my siblings ran toward the tree line. She was soaked, furious, and reaching for something in her jacket pocket. Don't, I warned, but she was already pulling out what looked like a small pistol. The gunshot echoed through the forest, but it wasn't from Patricia's weapon. James had circled back and tackled her from behind just as she fired, sending her shot wild into the trees. The two of them wrestled in the mud until Rebecca and Catherine arrived to help pin her down. Monica was nowhere to be seen, apparently she'd decided escape was more important than loyalty when the sprinklers hit. By the time the police backup arrived 7 minutes later, we had Patricia zip-tied with emergency restraints from the cabin's first aid kit, soaked and furious but alive. They found Monica's abandoned rifle and a trail leading deeper into the forest, though she was captured 2 hours later trying to hitchhike on the highway. Detective Chen arrived with a second wave of officers, grinning despite the chaos. The toxicology results came back early, she announced. Massive digitalis levels in your father's tissue samples. Patricia Whitmore is officially being charged with first-degree murder. 3 weeks later, I stood in the same courthouse where Patricia's bail hearing had been held, watching her accept a plea bargain, life in prison without parole in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. Monica got 15 years for conspiracy and attempted murder. The estate settlement was finalized that same afternoon. Dad's house, his investments, his rental properties, everything divided equally among his 4 children, just like his letter had requested. After legal fees and taxes, we each inherited roughly $340,000. But more importantly, we'd found each other. Rebecca used her share to open a free clinic in Dad's memory. James finished his residency and started a family medicine practice. Catherine completed her master's degree in social work. And me? I went back to school, something Dad had always wanted to help me do. Patricia had spent 13 years trying to destroy our family through lies and manipulation. Instead, she'd given us something she never intended, each other. We have Sunday dinners now, real ones, where nobody has to worry about money or hidden agendas or being secretly recorded. Dad's watch sits on my mantel next to a framed copy of his letter. Sometimes I catch myself winding it and imagining what he'd think about his 4 children finally being a real family. I think he'd be proud that we found our way back to each other, despite everything Patricia did to keep us apart. Justice served. Family restored. Dad's final wish fulfilled.